Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. On the program this week, new leadership for the United Kingdom and Kenya, plus devastating floods hit Pakistan following monsoon rains. We start off in the United Kingdom, where Elizabeth Mary Truss has become the country's third female prime minister. Her accession to office followed her victory at the Conservative Party leadership contest to succeed Boris Johnson.
As Liz Truss took over as British Prime Minister on Tuesday, some Britons on the streets of London questioned how much she would be able to deliver on her promises to tackle one of the most daunting set of challenges for an incoming leader in post-war history.
She's got a lot of work to do, and I, to be honest, don't have much faith that she will do it, being a member of the Tory party.
Well, it's very difficult to tell what she's like. I mean, her speech that she gave yesterday, which struck me as a bit, they called it wooden, but it struck me as more creaky than that, in which she was saying deliver, deliver, deliver over and over again. Much will depend, I suspect, on who she appoints for a cabinet and whether she listens to them or whether she decides herself that she knows better. Never underestimate, I think, the arrogance of those in charge.
A lot of promises have been made. It'll be interesting to see whether or not she's able to deliver on them, because it's, as many people have said, a very large and tricky inbox.
Truss, the fourth Conservative Prime Minister in 6 years, flew to the royal family's Scottish home to be asked by Queen Elizabeth to form a government. In her first speech outside number 10 Downing Street, after being appointed by the Queen, she vowed immediate action to tackle soaring energy bills, a looming recession and industrial strife. The 47-year-old former Foreign Secretary also pledged to transform Britain into an aspiration nation.
I'm honoured to take on this responsibility at a vital time for our country. What makes the United Kingdom great is our fundamental belief in freedom, in enterprise and in fair play. Our people have shown grit, courage and determination time and time again. We now face severe global headwinds caused by Russia's appalling war in Ukraine and the aftermath of COVID. Now is the time to tackle the issues that are holding Britain back. We need to build roads, homes and broadband faster. We need more investment and great jobs in every town and city across our country. We need to reduce the burden on families and help people get on in life. I know that we have what it takes to tackle those challenges. Of course, it won't be easy, but we can do it. We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone, everywhere, has the opportunities they deserve. I will take action this day and action every day to make it happen. United with our allies, we will stand up for freedom and democracy around the world, recognising that we can't have security at home without having security abroad.
Truss replaces Boris Johnson, who was forced out after 3 tumultuous years in power. Johnson, who fought to stay in office until the end, used his departure speech to boast of his successes and urged the country to come together and back his successor.
We have and will continue to have that economic strength to give people the cash they need to get through this energy crisis that has been caused by Putin's vicious war. And I know that Liz Truss and this compassionate Conservative government will do everything we can to get people through this crisis, and this country will endure it and we will win. And if Putin thinks that he can succeed by blackmailing or bullying the British people, then he is utterly deluded. I'll tell you why. This is a tough time for the economy. This is a tough time for families up and down the country. We can and we will get through it, and we will come out stronger the other side. But I say to my fellow Conservatives, it's time for politics to be over, folks. It's time for us all to get behind Liz Truss and her team and her programme and deliver for the people of this country. Because that is what the people of this country want, that's what they need, and that's what they deserve.
Liz Truss, the UK's third female Prime Minister, has appointed close allies to top jobs such as Kwesi Kwarteng as Finance Minister, Therese Coffey as Deputy Prime Minister and Health Minister, James Cleverly as Foreign Minister. It marks the first time a white man will not hold one of Britain's four most important ministerial positions.
From Britain, we're off to Kenya, where the Supreme Court has validated the victory of President-elect William Ruto. This followed the challenge to the election results as announced by the electoral authorities.
In a televised ruling on Monday, Kenyan Chief Justice Martha Koome delivered a scathing judgment that swept aside rival Raila Odinga's accusations of cheating.
As a consequence, we declare the election of the first respondent as President-elect to be varied under Article 143 of the Constitution. This being a matter cutting across the public interest, we order that each party do bear their own costs. It is so ordered. And finally, the court has asked me to also acknowledge, although we'll do it in the long draft, the enormous contribution made by counsel in these proceedings, and also the orderly way the counsel, all the advocates and parties conducted themselves. They remained seated throughout the proceedings. That is the judgment of the court.
Ruto William Samoei has been duly elected as the president.
William Ruto was declared the winner of the August 9 election amid chaotic scenes. 4 out of 7 election commissioners publicly disowned the results minutes before they were formally announced by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission's chairman. While Koome did uphold the IEBC's result, she also called for reform, saying the split had undermined public confidence. Nevertheless, she left no doubt as to the court's opinion of arguments advanced by Odinga's legal team. Opposition leader Raila Odinga's lawyer, James Orengo, said he would respect the court's decision, but vehemently disagrees.
In accordance with the law, we got to accept this decision as the law of the land, but I think it is a very ideological decision. I think there are a lot of what was said in the judgment, and we'll have time when that judgment comes out to put out a critique. But all it means is that in our jurisprudence, the petitioners will always have a big burden to carry when you have an electoral commission which is not open and transparent. The best way for this court to have made a decision was with the servers to be fully opened and all the election materials be placed before the court.
This was Odinga's 5th run at the presidency, blaming previous losses on rigging, claims that have twice sparked deadly protests in East Africa's wealthiest and most stable nation. Deputy President William Ruto will now be sworn in as Kenya's 5th president on September 13.
After the results of the votes were declared, it was taken up before the Supreme Court for scrutiny to make sure, beyond all doubt, that the will of the people had prevailed. The court returned its verdict, and I welcome it with tremendous humility. I salute the judges of the Supreme Court who have performed their duty with utmost fidelity to the Constitution.
He takes the helm at a time when the East African country faces several challenges, including billions of dollars in loans and the soaring costs of basic commodities such as food and fuel.
And to Pakistan, torrential monsoon rains have triggered the most severe flooding in the country's recent history, washing away villages and leaving more than 3 million children in need of humanitarian assistance. More than 1,300 people, including around 400 children, have lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands of homes have been destroyed, while many public health facilities, water systems and schools have been destroyed or damaged.
Traveling in a boat to where his home once stood, Ghulam Shulangi looks across the vast expanse of water with a feeling of disbelief and hopelessness. The flood waters swept across the town of Joey in Pakistan's southern Sindh province last week, washing away his village located in the outskirts.
Our houses which used to stand over there were completely inundated by the floods. The houses have gone, and whatever we had is now underwater.
Sulangi used to run a small grocery store and lived with 15 other family members in a sprawling brick house. The unprecedented floods have forced the families to take shelter in a local school in town, which have been converted into a camp for the displaced. Now, Solangi's family live day to day, unsure when the next meal will be.
There are no signs of our home there anymore. There is only water everywhere. Our village is gone. It looks like a huge lake now.
Record monsoon rains and melting glaciers in Pakistan's northern mountains have brought floods that have affected 33 million people and killed at least 1,314, including 458 children, according to Pakistan's National Disaster Management Agency. According to officials, about 636,940 displaced people have been housed in tent villages. The United Nations Children's Agency warns of a risk of more child deaths in the country from waterborne diseases.
This country, which had a higher level of stunting, already the same areas that are impacted now are the same areas that are now flooded. And the anticipation is with waterborne diseases, diarrhea, cholera, all the diseases you can imagine will hit and quite soon. So we need to be in place to respond to those as well.
The raging waters have also swept away 1.6 million houses, roads, rail, and the telecommunications systems, and inundated over 2 million acres of farmland, destroying both standing and stored crops. Estimates suggest the floods have caused at least $10 billion of damage. Authorities on Sunday, September the 4th, drained Pakistan's largest freshwater lake with hopes of draining enough water to stop the lake from busting its banks and swamping densely populated areas. But water levels in the lake to the west of the Indus River in the southern province of Sindh remain dangerously high.
When Foreign Dispatches returns, National Ballet of Ukraine performs benefit show in Florida in the United States. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Days after the United Nations Children's Agency warned that parts of Somalia will be hit by famine in the coming months, hundreds of children have already died in nutrition centers across the country. A famine in 2011 in Somalia claimed more than 250,000 lives, most of them children. And the Horn of Africa region is on track for a 5th consecutive failed rainy season.
Hundreds of children have died in food and nutrition centers across Somalia between January and July this year, as reported by the United Nations. But it says there could be other unknown hunger casualties.
730 looks like a small number, and it is, because we don't simply know what the full picture out there is. I have met many families whose children died along the way as they were coming on trek to come and seek help in the IDP camps and so on. Somalia really is a very difficult place to have a full understanding of what is happening out there, simply because the systems for data collection do not exist. And so what we have at the moment is really going by the deaths that are recorded in the nutrition centers.
Unfortunately, with hunger comes the tendency for disease to creep in. So the centers are for children with severe acute malnutrition, as well as other complications such as measles, cholera and malaria, and these are considered just a snapshot of the situation across the country.
Famine is on our doorsteps, and we're going to be witnessing the death of children on an unimaginable scale in the last months of 2022 if we don't act fast. 30,000 people have been arriving and moving between IDP camps each week over the past weeks, which is an increase of 135% on recent months. Over 1 million people have displaced internally this year so far. Most of them have walked for up to 10 days in search of food and water, arriving with literally nothing in a deteriorated state.
UNICEF says that disease outbreaks are increasing among children, with some 13,000 suspected measles cases reported in recent months, in which 8% are children under the age of 5. Funding for Somalia has increased in recent weeks, and the United Nations $1.46 billion appeal is now 67% funded. But aid officials warn that it has come very late and that more may be needed.
Meanwhile, it's a familiar story of despair and disappointment and death whenever drought and Somalia are mentioned in the same sentence. Happily, that's not the case this time, as farmers, amongst other entrepreneurs, are receiving support in terms of cash transfers to begin to take care of themselves. The International Committee of the Red Cross and Red Crescent has launched the program in Irishabela State.
Thanks to the International Committee of the Red Cross, about 150,000 families have already benefited from the mobile phone-based cash assistance plan. Each family was given $90 to cover the cost of food or other basic items through the program run by the ICRC. When Nadir Ahmed Adan received the grant, he says he used $50 to open a small shop and the rest to buy food for the family.
I left Bako region after losing my livestock. Because of the drought, the rains fell for 3 years, so the animals all died.
The drought has lasted for 4 consecutive rainy seasons, and its economic impact on the vulnerable communities is aggravated by the protracted armed conflict and rising food and fuel prices. Cash assistance aims to help the most vulnerable survive and to minimize their debt. With the next rainfall due in October, rural families stripped of their livelihoods continue to flee to towns, hoping to receive help from relatives and aid groups. To help people build resilience in the face of the worsening impact of climate shocks, agricultural cooperatives are being supported with drought-resistant seeds, farming tools, training and cash for fuel needed to irrigate.
We do this to keep the farming business going, despite the drought.
The ICRC is distributing cash assistance to people in conflict-affected parts of Somalia, as well as rehabilitating boreholes and wells. The agency also supports primary health care services.
With about 57.9% of the people in Africa undernourished, there is a need to rethink food production plans across the continent. The bold moves governments across the continent need to make form the basis of the African Green Revolution Forum in Kigali this week. Under the theme, Grow, Nourish, Reward, Bold Actions for Resilient Food Systems, the summit explored the action tracks that will accelerate food system transformation, especially after the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit.
With 8 years left towards the landmark 2030, when Africa, like the rest of the world, must achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, notably the eradication of hunger and tackling food insecurity. The reality today shows that more than 282 million people face extreme hunger on the continent. Climate crisis, COVID-19, and conflict in Russia have all combined to push the number up.
Your presence here today,
charging the more than 2,000 participants gathered here in Kigali for this year's African Green Revolution Forum, the Prime Minister of Rwanda says it is time to get back on track to change the negative trend.
For this to be achieved, there is a need to build a strong partnership between the public and the private sector for diversified investments that broadly impacts agricultural production.
Across the continent, steps have already been taken by various stakeholders to deliver the innovations required to drive the food system transformation, but impacts have not been felt. Making these solutions work for everyone is the challenge before these delegates.
The strategies and actions we will take from this summit must be resilient, because the economic and climate-related shocks have revealed that our systems are fragile. Our people need new capacities and innovations, and innovation is no longer a luxury. The shocks are becoming an everyday challenge, thus resilience must be embedded in our strategies and actions.
But there is also a case being made for a leadership that will drive the transformation of the food system on the continent.
So we need a leadership that is actually backed by evidence, but also a leadership that's flexible to the context that we face today. We know that the crisis that we're facing globally and in the continent is no longer a one-off issue.
The Africa Agriculture Status Report, which is an annual publication by the organizers of this forum, was launched at the opening ceremony. It says between $40 and $77 billion in public funds and $180 billion in private funds are needed yearly for the transformation in the sector across the continent.
And finally on the program, the National Ballet of Ukraine has been thrilling audiences in the United States. They performed a benefit show in Orlando, Florida, where the audience were impressed with the event, especially as an example of the resilience and the culture of Ukraine. Take a look.
Ballet dancers twirled and glided across the stage in Orlando, Florida, in the National Ballet of Ukraine's first performance in the United States since the Russian invasion earlier this year. The dancers were hosted by the Dr. Phillips Center for Performing Arts in Orlando, Florida.
Tonight is a very momentous occasion for us, for the community and for Ukraine. We're here because we love and we want to support the people of Ukraine. What better way to do it than to show the resilience and culture of Ukraine by having the Ukraine Ballet perform for us.
The troupe performed parts of famous ballets while also showcasing Ukrainian culture in the weekend performance, which benefited charities providing humanitarian assistance and emergency medical aid to Ukraine. "31-year-old Mikita Shukurova was born in eastern Ukraine and has lived in Kiev for 15 years, working as a dancer. He fled to Europe at the start of the war and now has joined the Ukraine National Ballet in Japan.
Yeah, it's very important, and we understand how a huge amount of donations, a huge number of people who want to support Ukraine. We understand it, and we try to do our best. And it's very important for us, and we really appreciate.
All of the proceeds are going to various organizations that support humanitarian and emergency medical aid to Ukrainian citizens, refugees, and veteran services.
If you are Ukrainian, will you please stand?
And this is where we say goodbye until next time. But remember, our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Oyetayo.